I'm Kaylin Walls, the Vice President of the Louisville Forum, and welcome to our March 2025 program. The Louisville Forum programs typically meet at noon here at Vincenzo's on the second Wednesday of every month. All are welcome. Founded in 1984, the Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public issues group. We host debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that impact the greater Louisville community. For more information about the Louisville Forum and how to join, please visit LouisvilleForum.org. Today's program, Beyond LMPD, Neighborhood Efforts to Reduce Violence in Louisville. While reports show that gun violence in Louisville fell nearly 40% since 2023, city officials and community leaders say that there is still work to be done in the community to make our neighborhoods safer. In the last few weeks, Louisville had a number of homicides, including the last week of February where there were 9. The conversation concerning violence in Louisville often steers towards Louisville Metro Police Department and the criminal justice system. It's a topic that's often brought up at forum programs, most recently during our program with the new Louisville Metro Police Department Chief, Paul Humphrey, as well as during various legislative updates and ballot measure discussions that we've had with legislators here at the forum. However, today at the forum, we wanted to give a platform and our full attention to one area of the discussion that, while sometimes is referenced during those discussions, has not been the full focus, and that is the tremendous neighborhood and community efforts that are being made to address violence in Louisville through proactive, not only reactive or punitive measures. So consistent with our Louisville Forum mission, a topic that's local and contemporary, we are very lucky to have with us today Kimberly Moore, the CEO of the Joshua Community Connectors, Dr. Eddie Woods, the co-founder and CEO of No More Red Dots, and Melvin Robards, the Associate Director of Pivot to Peace. Kimberly Moore is the founder and CEO of Joshua Community Connectors, which helps address the basic needs, including mental health of families impacted by gun violence. She is 27 years sober with a PhD from the streets with long-standing relationships here in the community. Besides serving as a consultant for Goodwill Industries, she is a founding member of the Reentry Task Force. She's served on numerous boards, including Choose Well and No More Red Dots. Kimberly Moore has traveled across the country addressing community and gang violence. She's won numerous awards, including the Bell Award, the prestigious Muhammad Ali Core Principal Conviction Award for standing firm even when uncomfortable. Ms. Moore is a mother of 4 children and a nana to 6 amazing grandchildren, and she believes that when you have been brought out of the darkness, it is your duty and responsibility to be a light for others. She acknowledges that this work can be dangerous, but believes that one cannot be effective if you are full of fear. Thank you for being with us today, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Next to Kimberly, we have Melvin Robards, the Associate Director of Pivot to Peace. Melvin is a dedicated nonprofit leader with a passion for serving underserved and vulnerable communities. With years of experience in social services, he has held roles in cases as a case manager, program manager, senior manager overseeing grants that target marginalized populations, and currently he's the Associate Director of Gun Violence Intervention Program at Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. Melvin works to break cycles of violence and provide meaningful opportunities for at-risk individuals. His commitment to equity, advocacy, and community empowerment drive his work in creating lasting social impact. Thanks for joining us, Melvin. And last but not least, we have with us Dr. Eddie Woods. Dr. Eddie Woods is the CEO and co-founder of No More Red Dots. He has over 30 years of hands-on work with community groups, gangs, and youth groups, where he has facilitated and guided over 100 youth enrolling in colleges from gang and drug environments, numerous youths being directed back into the formal school setting, and assisted many youth and adults in becoming contributing citizens. He has a master's and a PhD in criminal justice and has won various awards, including 2 Distinguished Citizen Awards. We are thrilled to have Dr. Eddie Woods with us here today, as well as the rest of the panelists. If you would join me in giving them a round of applause. Now, before we get started with our questions for today's program on Beyond LMPD, the neighborhood efforts to address violence, I wanted to start by giving a few minutes to each of our panelists to give us a brief overview of what they're doing in the community and their respective organizations. Kimberly, ladies first, I'll let you start.
So I love what I do. And I think that when you get up in the morning, you love what you do, you don't even feel like you're going to work. And so one of the things I get to do that they didn't talk about is I get to work hand in hand with LMPD and do what we call customs, which is what we did yesterday, where we went to gang members' houses to talk to them about interrupting the violence. And so when she talks about this work is dangerous, not bulletproof, but I love the fact that I get to be at the table with GVI, which is Group Violence Intervention, and Deputy Mayor James is here, and that's a program that was incorporated by Russell Coleman 4 years ago. And so we're interrupting the cycles of violence head on. And so I love what I get to do. My kids don't necessarily like it that much, but I love what I get to do in this city. And so to be part of an initiative through the mayor's office and to be able to work hand in hand with Goodwill, I think that's what this work is all about. And so everybody up here, we're all connected in some type of way. I'm the chair of No More Red Dots. And I've been on the ground for 20+ years doing this work, and so I have 3 grandsons. I want to make sure that Louisville's a safe city for them to grow up in.
Thank you, Kimberly. Melvin, would you give us an overview of the work that you're doing at Pivot to Peace?
Yes, ma'am. And just like Kim, I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and it was a joy to learn that Goodwill had acquired funding to participate in the community violence intervention. Being able to work and provide direct services to the people of the city impacted by gun violence is something that provides a type of feed, or a type of what's the word? A type of freezing. What type of? Sorry, I'm a little nervous, you all. It feeds your soul in a way that you would not know until you've had a chance to do the work. Being able to see how our services can change the trajectory of someone's life and introduce them to opportunities that they did not know were available to them is just something that you can't put words to. Seeing the change in young adults or people who have felt like they had no more opportunities or no more chances. They were at the end of the road. Seeing the excitement in them when you ignite that spark and they realize that life is open to many possibilities. It's why we do the work that we do. For us, our wing of the Pivot to Peace initiative, we are the boots on the ground. Our people are what we call the violence interrupters. They go into the neighborhoods that have historically been affected by gun violence the most, and they try to connect with the people who are at the highest risk of either committing gun violence or being a victim of gun violence. And they try to connect those people to social services and show them that there are opportunities outside of the poverty that you see day to day. That's why we do what we do.
Thank you, Melvin. Dr. Woods, if you would.
My name is Eddie Woods, and I'm the CEO of No More Red Dots Incorporated, and I'm probably the relic in the room. I've been doing it longer than anybody on the planet, I think. We started out just doing group sessions in the projects when we had 6 projects in Louisville in 1995. We actually started in 91. So it all evolved to now we do intervention through our programs. So we develop programs based on what our participants and the families and the people in the community kind of felt like needed to happen and that they would support. Our whole thing is community support. We usually know within about 45 minutes, if it's long, what has happened on the street, why it happened, who's involved, and a lot of it has to do with folks already being on our radar, having been in our programs. We've got the blessing, I guess, for a better way to put it, of having people who've been in your group sessions for years. So we've got grandparents and parents who actually send their children to us to make some corrections in the direction they're going in. We get notifications from the community pretty quickly. We had been getting some notifications from LMPD. We work with almost any and everybody that want to work with us. We're focusing a lot now on food insecurity and shelter and those kinds of things like that as being causes for folks to get involved in violent activity. I'm glad to be here, but then again, when you get to be an antique, you're glad to be anywhere.
Well, we are certainly glad to have you. Before we open the floor up to audience questions, I did just want to give a brief minute to each of you to talk some about the proactive work that you're doing versus the reactive work. I know we're going to be talking a lot about collaborations with various agencies and collaboration that you do with one another. And Dr. Reddy, I know that you just mentioned some of the proactive work addressing food insecurity. If you could expand a little on that for our forum members.
Yeah, we started to have several people that would come to us and try to get us to talk them out of things that they were going to be doing, like robbing folks and things like that. And some of what they would share with us was that they were trying to feed their families. So we developed partnerships with Kroger and Feed Louisville and Dare to Care and other folks that had the same interests. So when you've been doing this work for a while, you tend to try to diversify to get away from some of the constraints that you would have otherwise. So a lot of what has happened in terms of the partnerships, we partner with everybody pretty much, and these folks at the table, as well as the idea is that in these times you got to be willing to come up with some creative ways to keep helping people, and that's a lot of what we've been able to do.
Thank you, Melvin.
For us, in regards to reactive, because we are actually boots on the ground, and we canvass the neighborhoods that are a part of our grant agreement, the 4 neighborhoods that, again, that have historically had high levels of gun violence. From a proactive standpoint, our violence intervention specialists connect with the community to share information about resources, about upcoming any neighborhood association meetings that they are trying to get more community engagement from, so they can use us as an outreach group. We also, again, anything that directly impacts the area that we are assigned, we try to connect with any local businesses to assist them with issues they may be having in regard to gun violence or issues with people who, again, when people are, similar to what Mr. Wood said, when people are in that survival mode, the things that they will do are a lot of times not logical, but they are just trying to find ways to satisfy the need at the moment. So by being able to share with them resources about job training, post-secondary education, or just social services available to the neighborhood is where I feel like we are proactive.
Yeah, thank you. Kimberly?
So, proactive for me is when I get to do customs with LMPD to interrupt the cycle of violence. And so one of the things I get to do is I get to do relocation. And so the CEO of Goodwill is here, Rena Sharp, and I woke her up at 3 o'clock in the morning before and said, I need to put a kid in a hotel until I could get him out of Louisville. Never one time has she said no. And so when you think about it, I want you to think about the fact that I have to cross party lines in order to be successful, and so I'm a diehard Democrat, but I've done a lot of work with Russell Coleman, who is a Republican, and people say, why? If we want this city to change, we have to be willing to cross party lines and put our egos to the side. And so for me, the definition of ego is edging God out. And so is my ego bigger than the mission that God has set in front of me for me to do? And so we have to be willing to do that work, and I have to be willing to do it tired, mad, angry. And here's what I'll say, and I'll be quiet. You have to be willing to do this work with people you don't even like. And so are we going to allow kids to die because we have some personality issues? Or are we going to put our issues to the side for the common good? And so for me, proactive is being quiet sometimes when I want to say some stuff. Proactive for me is not addressing the people that I really want to address until I can pull them to the side. One of the things I always tell Deputy Mayor James, I get more things done in backdoor meetings versus trying to blast people publicly. So if I got an issue, and I used to work for Mayor Fisher for a long time, if I got an issue, I'm going to go see the person. I'm going to go have the conversations, and then we're going to eat this apple one bite at a time. And so I hope that you all will help us. And one more thing we do is we do house parties. And if you don't know what a house party is, it's when you bring a group of your friends together, that we come together and we talk about the work that we're doing in the community, because they have not been able to get out and get in the community. And when I look at this room, I know a lot of y'all in this room are not affected by gun violence. And I said this 10 years ago, if you don't help us now, you'll pay for it then. And I still stand in that.
Thank you all. Lawrence, if you would start with our audience questions. And again, for those in the audience who have a question, there are question slips on the table. You can just hold those up and board members will collect them.
Yeah, if you just raise your hand if you have a question, a piece of paper, and we'll come by and collect it. Let me ask you this. I want to hear from each of you. Gun violence does not happen in a vacuum. I'd like to hear from each of you about what you believe is the root or are the roots of the problem, starting with Ms. Moore.
I think you have to think about poverty, and I think you have to think about, like, some of y'all in this room are lawyers, so you might be a third-generation lawyer, so I get a third-generation drug dealer, and so I get a family where that's all they've done their whole life, and they can never do anything different until somebody steps out of that box to show them something different. And so with programs like Pivot to Peace, Goodwill, The Spot, we've been able to step outside and show young people what it's like to really get up and go to work, and then do what we call internships and partnerships, where we say, if little Johnny has to be at work at 9 o'clock, don't fire him if he get there at 9:30. He's never had to get up and go to work. He's been up all night selling drugs. And I want you to think about this when you think about violence and drugs. Two type of drug dealers in this city, the one that want the fame, the nice cars and all of that. Then you got a group of kids over here who's poor, impoverished, that are selling drugs to feed their family. So we have to address the family as a whole, not just the kid that we're working with. I want to know who his mom is. I want to know where his dad's at. I want to know where he comes from so I can know exactly who I'm dealing with in order for the city to change.
The same. For us, I believe with us seeing it firsthand every day, I think the biggest factor in agreement has been poverty. Secondary to poverty, I believe trauma. Trauma plays a big part in someone's attitude or even acceptance of violence as a resolution to a conflict. Lack of opportunity is another reason. I believe when you wake up and you see poverty every day and you are surrounded by poverty, you may think that no other options exist. So just even awareness of things that are available to them, I believe plays a role in the acceptance of gun violence.
I think we all know what the textbook root causes are.
Yes.
One of the biggest problems that we see in No More Red Dots is pressure. There's a significant amount of pressure just to survive, just to be who it is that your friends think you are. Most of our young people do not have anyone in their day or their lives to process their day with. They constantly have to come up with their own reasons for why things are happening or why situations are what they are. It made a huge difference to me as a person growing up in the California area of Louisville who had all kinds of nonsense around them, to have somebody to talk to. If I didn't have my mom, I probably would have been nuts for real. I was kind of nuts anyway, but I think a lot of it is that I found folks to talk to who were interested in what I was doing. And some of those folks were just, we had folks who were just down on their luck, you know, who actually had one gentleman that I talked to for a lot of years until he passed, had been a professor at Kentucky State University. When his wife died, he gave up. But every day I would bring him a sandwich until my mom realized that I was asking for more sandwiches than I could eat at school. But he was there to talk to me every day. So you find it if you don't already have it at the house, you're gonna find it. Those of us who are blessed to understand that this is not something that's a job, it has to be a mission. So for me, I've done it for as long as I have, and I feel like God's got me, so I'm not really worried a whole lot about what might happen if I go into a crack house to get a mom out of there.
That's right.
Or if I pull a dad away from some people that are trying to get him to do something that won't have him sitting with his kids at the end of the day. So it's kind of root causes are a lot of what we already know. We can go on the computer and get that. But if you're doing the work, and everybody has a role to play now, that's the other part. Everybody in this room's got a role to play. It's a question of whether you want to play it or not.
That's right.
Thank you. This is a double-sided coin question. So one person asked about when you say you go into the person's house, what is the actual process of that? How do you get invited? How do you reach out to them? How do you, how do you get into someone and knock on the door and say, hey, my name is, or how do you identify these people and, these families and build trust with them for them to let you into their houses? And the other flip side of that is you're coming in from the externally. What happens if it's happening internally? What happens if one of your family members is involved in gang activity? And you're fearful for them? What suggestions do you have for family members on how to bring them back?
I think everybody up here has had family members that have been involved in some things they shouldn't have been involved in, and I approach my family just like I approach somebody in the street. And so, I have a daughter who, the police were looking for her, and I turned her in, and she went to prison. And so the black community was very mad at me because I turned her in. And so you ask how we get into those houses. We get into those houses because we build relationships. I went to a house yesterday with LMPD. Kid come out, he's all over the place, he's cussing them out, he's acting crazy, but it's no man in the house. So a male police officer is trying to talk to him, but he's raised by women. So I took the lead and stepped forward and started to talk to him, and he calmed down because he's used to taking orders from women, not men. And so once we get in and things are happening internally, Dr. Woods will tell you, Melvin, you have to assess the situation. Do we need to call CPS? Do we need to call Adult Protective Services? Do we need to tell the police there's other stuff that we need to do? And so knowing our roles, I got to know when to fall back. We went to a house yesterday. I whispered to the police and said, I can't go up there with them. I know them, too close to the situation, and I stayed in my lane. You just got to know what you know.
For us to answer the first question, how do you get into the homes? When we began operationalizing the Goodwill arm of Pivot to Peace, we were very intentional about who we hired to be the violence interrupters. It was necessary for them to be credible messengers, people who had prior relationships in these neighborhoods or prior relationships with the people who are committing the violence in these neighborhoods. By fostering those relationships, the hope is that you are able to gain enough trust from these individuals that they invite you into the home. To attest to what Dr. Wood said, a lot of people, they want to change. They want the help. They want to reach out for the assistance, but there is a lot of pressure. So catching them at that vulnerable moment when they are willing to reach out to someone and sit down and weigh their options is a pivotal time, and that's where we try to seize the opportunity. When you invite us into the home, we want to, to let you know of all of the opportunities available to you. We want to connect you to those services, and we want to essentially hold your hand throughout the entire process so that we don't lose you again. We don't want you to have a change of mind. We don't want you to pull away. We want you to hold our hand until we can connect you to the people who can help you.
I think a lot of what we have to be is patient, and we have to be willing to build the relationships. That means a lot of times you got to be willing to sit on somebody's front porch and not even state your agenda till after you got to know them a little bit. That might be a day or two later. You got to be willing to sit there and sometimes eat bad chicken. Everybody can't cook chicken. You got to be willing to do stuff like that and listen to what they gotta say, because a lot of what we do we got two levels of going into people's houses. One level is they invite you in, and you go in there and you get to meet folks and everything like that. Another level is we go in there on a mission a lot of times. Sometimes we're going in there to try to figure out how we're going to get this mom out who her kids are looking for, or this dad out who has been avoiding the house because he done messed up the check. So, these are real-time things that folks have to deal with. And then every once in a while, we get invited to somebody's house who's got a gazillion bedrooms and a whole lot of bathrooms, and they just want to talk. So it's the same process. It's the same process. You got to get to know people.
Kim, you mentioned something that I want to follow up on. You talked about the fact that you have to go in sometimes because the man is not used to getting orders from men. That leads to the question, what role does the lack of fathers in some of these households play in the problem?
So when I encounter a young man and, his mom's on drugs and his dad's in prison, and what you have to think about is this community has a group of young people whose mothers are telling them that they're the man of the house. And so the man's not present. It's a lack of respect. And so when this kid was yelling and screaming and cussing, most people I deal with would discount him and just leave him when he's angry. So I said, what are you mad about? He had stopped talking to the police and he had started to talk to me. I was able to engage and say, what's missing? What do you need? And so I'm a 62-year-old daddy's girl, and every good core value I have came from my father. And so I can only imagine not growing up without that man who instilled values in me. And so that's what's missing, the leadership, the person that is the authority in the house, the person that leads the family. I grew up with that. And so, I got off track a little bit, but it was easy for me to come back. But father's missing, so I'm working, I'll say this and be quiet, is working with broken boys, working with broken women who don't have relationships with their dads. That is pivotal and crucial in families when you are neglected by the people that were supposed to love you the most.
Thank you. Now here's another double one. What more can the mayor's office do or offer? And then also going higher than that, what kind of statute or bill do you need to see from Frankfurt, from the state, to help you do your work? So local first, and then mayor's office, and then state, please.
I'm gonna just breathe a minute while I ponder what I'm gonna say. The mayor's office is here, by the way. No, so what I'll say in regard with the mayor's office is, from Fisher to Greenberg, the mayor's office has done everything that we need them to do. And one of the things I've been very verbal about is, more funding, and I've talked to the mayor, I've talked to the deputy mayor, is Mayor Greenberg is supportive of this work. And so we have a meeting every Thursday at Goodwill where we sit down every Thursday with a group of stakeholders and we talk about who's been shot, who's died, and all of that. We address that every Thursday. And once a month, we address governance, where we bring in the big stakeholders out of Frankfurt to have the conversation. So I think Mayor Greenberg, the people that he's brought in Misty Wright, he's brought in somebody from OSU, he's brought in some people, some major players, and then you look at Paul Humphrey's strategy, and I think that the mayor's office has done everything that they're supposed to do in order for us to move this work. So I think going into 2025, later 2025, you're gonna see some different things. And so we were doing well regarding homicides until we had all those murders within a 10-day period. And so what I'll tell you is, out of 2 triple homicides, I knew 5 of the people. And so out of 13 homicides, I knew 9 of the people. And probably 6 of the people are people who we've been at their house, we've had conversations, we've asked you to change your life, and you don't. And so, Mayor Greenberg is very supportive. I mean, I call Deputy Mayor all hours of the night, when I have a thought or argument that I think I need to make, and he answers the phone. So I think the mayor's office, and so state level, Russell Coleman is involved in governance. Brasure believes in the work that we're doing. And so some people could care less about this work because they haven't been impacted. And one of the things that I've talked about is sitting in Indian Hills in a $1 million mansion with a kid who goes to St. X. And so some of y'all probably St. X graduates. So when them boys got caught with them guns and drugs at St. X, you saw it on the news one time, they lawyered up and you never heard about it again. Could my black grandson take a gun into Central High School and then still go to U of L? Some of those boys are on campus at U of L right now, and we have to talk about white privilege. And that's what that was in that instant. See some of y'all shaking y'all say, we can agree to disagree.
Dr. Wood, you talked about how long you've been doing this work. How has the problem, if it has, changed over the years? How's the challenge changed over the years?
It hasn't changed a whole lot other, as far as the actual activity. What we've not paid attention to in the early days was the importance of risk factors and how you can build up protective factors and those things. I think the most significant change is the proliferation of weapons. We've got quite a few more weapons, high-powered weapons and so forth that are available to our young folks. But we've also gotten, in terms of change, the law enforcement has got significantly better. I went through the FBI's Citizens Academy, and so I got a real good look at how law enforcement actually is as much scientific as anything else now. I think as far on the street level, it's not as organized as folks would think, but it is somewhat organized. It's organized from the standpoint of survival in most cases, if in territorial kinds of things like that. But it's not, some of the work that we do, you got to go to the movies to see.
That's right.
It's not the kind of stuff that that is not without damage. I have to give my folks, I only got about 8 people now working with me, and most of them are volunteering as opposed to actually being paid. But the thing is, I have to still give them time not to do work, not to think about the work, because I can't even count the number of times that I have gone home, you know, with tears in my eyes, feeling like I could do more, but I still don't have enough time in the day to do any of it, if that makes sense at all. So I think I lean on now, whereas it was just myself, Dwayne Campbell and Norman Martin, and then some really good police officers who actually paid attention to the community, who actually looked at things and let us know. That's the change now. We're operating like, we're trying to build a perfect model in most cities. We do a lot of work with a lot of different cities in terms of training and those kind of things like that. And everybody wants to model because that's where the money is. If you don't have something that's research-based, or you can say it's research-based, you're not probably going to get the money. So in some cases, you got to sacrifice a few dollars in order to save more lives, because you got to do things that are a little bit unconventional. So I think that's the biggest change right now. We're having to be more creative, and it's difficult a lot of times to explain to folks that it's not part of their frame of reference. That's probably the single most difficult things if you're looking for ways to continue what it is you do. But we found more folks are willing to listen now, like today. You know, I mean, years ago, we wouldn't have been sitting in the room like this.
That's right.
You know, we would have had to slip that conversation to somebody as we walk past. You know, so that's the biggest change.
There's a question about what to do about MS-13, but I want to expand that to have each of you respond to the question of how organized gangs, how much of a problem are they in this problem, and what are your thoughts on what could be done about organized gangs like MS-13 and others? Whoever wants to start, but I'd like each of you to talk about that.
Yeah, well, the gang issue has always been a huge issue in our city, even when we didn't want to own up to the fact. You know, I had the opportunity, because I do DUI and drug classes, and we had my interpreter, Hispanic fellow, who has since passed, and now his brother's my interpreter. But he had an opportunity for me to meet with some people who had their licenses suspended and so forth. I didn't have any idea where I was going or anything like that, but I knew I had to have somebody with me, and I let my folks know where I was going. We went to a house in the South End it was maybe 20 people in there. I think about 11 of them were parts of cartels and different things like that. You know, so we went in and started the process of getting them registered for DUI classes. they wouldn't come to class, so we had to basically take the class to them. We found out later that a lot of these folks were involved in various gangs. They weren't nearly the problem that the people who lived in our neighborhoods were, because they were trying to emulate some of the activities that they had seen in videotapes, that they had seen in movies, and those kinds of things like that. And so the street gangs were organized basically around neighborhoods. So we knew a lot of them. We knew from our database that we've kept since 1995 which ones might be most marked for death, which ones might be most likely to participate in drive-bys and those kind of things. So when we started to set up our program and we started to target those individuals who we knew would likely be involved. So we were able to turn some shooters and potential shooters away from what it was they were doing. Let me put it like this. Through our classes, we had one young lady who was actually doing drive-bys and actually driving and those kind of things like that. Long story made short, when we met her, she was 14. She's now graduated from high school, getting ready to go to college. She made her own prom dress in one of our Peace Through Fashion programs. We had another young man who was right close to every kind of criminal pursuit you can think of. But he got an opportunity to go to Trinity High School. He stayed with us. He's now getting full scholarship to the University of Louisville. His brother didn't make that choice. He didn't make that choice. So instead of him staying in school, he's now working with us on the street. So it varies. It's a lot. It's a whole lot, particularly for dinosaurs like myself. It's a whole lot.
And so we have I think they were talking about 10 to 14 authenticated street gangs. And so if you pay attention to the news, Victory Park is one of the most dangerous street gangs in the city. I'm from Victory Park. I'm able to get out of the car at Victory Park and talk to those guys and be safe. And, and David James was over that area for a long time, the deputy mayor was. And so I haven't always been somebody who would be sitting right here. I'm from Victory Park. David James has locked me up on occasion in the past. And so I tell you that story to say, fast forward, we're sitting in the same room and he's the deputy mayor and I'm the CEO of a nonprofit doing some solution-based work. And I tell you that because people have to step into your lives. When I was in treatment and I was going in and out of jail, Judge Brian Edwards was my public defender in 1994. I've been surrounded by some good people all along. And the only reason I'm who I am is because the people that God surrounded me with prior to me knowing who I was. I'll never forget this lady said, if you ever get sober, you're gonna do some great stuff. And I just cussed her out because I couldn't see it. And so if you can't see it, somebody got to speak it into your life. And so when people started to speak that into my life and I started to get sober, I was like, this shit ain't too bad. Maybe I might like this. And so here I am. And, David James and I were neighbors for 15 years. And so when you get to see somebody who saw you at your lowest point and they get to see you rise out of the ashes like the phoenix and do some good work, that's what it's all about. So we speak into the lives of young people. Melvin will tell you, we got a kid, and the prosecutor who prosecuted this kid is in the room. And we went to this kid and we begged him to do right. And I'll never forget, I talked to him on a Thursday and I said, you are not going to be satisfied till something tragic happened. Melvin talked to him. We all talked to him. Friday, he was dead. And that was a blow for us. And so I'll say this really quick. You all see us doing this work, and y'all see us out here, and we're on panels and forums and jumping on planes and doing all that kind of stuff. You don't see the pain that we have when we have poured into a kid and we've invested, and right when he looked like he was getting ready to turn the curve, he dies or he gets killed. I leave this weekend to go to Tampa to see a family that Rena Sharp helped me relocate. They killed their son on his birthday right here in this city. And the mom said, I cannot live in Louisville anymore. I had my son there. That's where they killed him at. So we relocate people all across the country and we go visit them to see what it's like. So authenticated gangs are here. For you people who may not think that you have gang members in your family, kids from St. X and Trinity come down and hang out in the West End and buy guns and buy drugs. I want you to think about that. Sitting in $1 million mansion with a guy whose dad is one of the wealthiest people in the state of Kentucky saying, We're fourth generation St. X. He can't get expelled because it's going to embarrass the family. He got expelled, and the family got embarrassed. And you have to think about that. You have to think about what that looks like from the people like us who work with kids who can't afford a Rob Eckert, can't afford a Keith Camish. You know, they just got a public defender and they go to prison because they're poor and black. I want you to take that home with you and think about it. Have conversations with your grandkids on what that looks like to live in privilege.
And authentic or not, each individual can be equally as dangerous. The same factors that contribute to someone becoming an authenticated gang member are the same factors that contribute to someone becoming a member of a gang who is not. Lack of leadership in the home, lack of knowledge of resources, these are the key things that push individuals into violence. For us being able to connect with the people and for them to buy into what we are trying to expose them to, it makes a dramatic change in people if they're willing to accept it. The thing is now, for a lot of people, especially with the onset of social media, it's almost like an accolade to be a part of a gang. And until the culture around it is changed, it's gonna be hard or it makes it hard for us to have people to remove themselves from the gang willingly before, as Kim said, before something tragic happens. Until something happens and it hits you at home or it hits you close, then, you know, especially young people, they believe that they're gonna live forever. They believe they're invincible. And until they see it hit somebody close to them, it's hard to convince them to pull away from it. So it's one of our biggest battles.
We've had discussions about the broken, and mentioned broken boys and girls, and what has, besides talking with them and relating to them, what has been a pivot point for actually reaching these kids? And can you also talk about how long realistically does it take to see real behavioral change?
I think for the most part, for us, we don't have an age out.
That's right.
I mean, it's like we say on paper 13 to 24, but it's 13 till you don't need us anymore. It's a lot of what that is. But I think you started to see a change. For us, we've got 55 young people that had been referred to us over the last 18 months. Actually, a little longer, closer to 2 years now, and only 3. And all of them came with gun charges. We asked for that. We only had 3 to get new cases, and those new cases are not gun cases. They've been theft and adjustment kind of cases. So I think one of the things that we try to emphasize with our group sessions and with our programming is to change what it is that they're doing to them becoming a contributor. If they can become a contributor, we've seen that change a whole lot. We do food distribution twice a month at our headquarters. And so in doing that, we have some of our young people help us to distribute the food. On one occasion, this elderly lady was picking up her food, picking up some stuff, and we had one of the young men who we knew was involved in mayhem help her to her car. When he carried her stuff to her car, she thanked him and hugged him. So, and then he came back to the porch where we had the food. So I'm looking at this cat, and he's like, got a kind of a dazed look on his face and all like that. And then he looked like he was gonna start crying. So I'm asking him, man, what's wrong? What happened? He said he never had anybody to thank him for anything. He never had anybody to thank him and hug him at the same time. So this started him toward a whole nother level of being a leader in our group sessions. He came to me and asked me how could he clean up his activity on the street. That means you gotta be willing to pay some dues. If you got criminal cases, you gotta be willing to go to court and deal with all of that end of it. Then you gotta do some apologizing. And we know when you do apologizing, you're still gonna have a situation where you got some folks who don't know you've changed your life, that you've done some damage to. So we got to kind of ride with this young man so that he's got some level of protection as he starts to make the change. So it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen real quick. It's something that they're going to have to want to do. They're going to have to want to interact with other people besides us, other organizations besides us, other people who can guide them, because we don't have all of the direction and the guidance. That the mental health stuff is a whole nother situation. Most of our kids have PTSD and don't even know. They've been traumatized at levels that we can't even imagine. You know, when you sleep for months in a bathtub to keep from getting hit by gunfire, that changes a lot of how you perceive and how you view the world. So I think it's a long process in some cases. I can't think of any of it that's ever been quick. When we have a formula with our organization, we want to change a participant into an ally, into a worker. Almost all of my people, for the most part, came through our group sessions when they were like 11, 12, 14, like that. And most of them are approaching 30 now.
And one of the things, good.
No, and I was going to say, everyone's timeline is different depending on the situation. The word I was looking for in my opening statement when I was nervous was joy. And the joy that you get from the work is something that it follows that timeline. Watching somebody's progress, watching each milestone that they surpass, the joy that comes from that is something that you cannot put words to. But to counter it, the heartbreak that comes with somebody not being able to reach the end of their cycle at one point was almost enough to make me want to wash my hands just with the work, period. Because in a year's time, I believe it was close to 8 people who I was working with personally who didn't get a chance to see the things they were working towards come to fruition. Some of them were new fathers. They were all someone's son, somebody's brother, somebody's nephew, uncle, and watching them and the pain that it brings to the family, it makes the work hard. Again, the joy that comes from it, watching people be able to succeed, it outweighs it, but it's a close balance.
And one of the things I wanted to say is, like you asked, what could we do? So you hear me talk about Russell Coleman in 2016 when he was a U.S. attorney. You know, I went to him and I was working for the mayor and I said, can we do a partnership? And they're looking at me like, we put people in jail and you work with people who go to jail, so what are you talking about? And so I asked him to ask some of his defense attorneys and prosecutors to mentor some young black men and boys. And they did. And a couple of those relationships I think may still be going on. But when I went to see them, to talk to them, you know, people said, what are we going to do with these people? We send people to jail for a living. I said, let's rephrase it. Let's have a conversation with these boys and talk about, this is your job. You don't send people to jail for a living, but if they break the law, they probably got to come and see you. And so when Melvin talks about the heartbreak, when I saw that shooting at the DMV, I had literally been in front of that woman, been in front of her son, been at the hospital when they were working on him, and really, you know, it was just a level of anger. And when she got killed, I just was like 2 weeks, I asked myself, did I do everything I could do? Did I do everything I needed to do for their family? Did I give them all that I could give them when they lost their life? And her sister called me a day before yesterday and made me cry. She said, my mother wants to tell you that you did the best you can do with our family. So long story short, what you don't know is another sister's been shot with an AK, another boy's been shot. Family has a whole lot of tragedy. So I'm second guessing, I'm talking to Rena, I'm talking to people, did I do everything I could do? And when her family said to me, the day before they were having the funeral, you did everything you could do, that gave me some closure and gave me some peace and know I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
I have a question from the students, which I'm going to modify just a bit and expand. The question is, what role can students like the ones that are here today play in solving this problem, and expand it to this entire room? We can admire what you're doing, but what do the rest of us do?
So I think, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I think, you know, what you can do, you know, when I look in this room, I see Mr. Beck, and we were on a glide trip, and we needed a space to host some of the most violent kids in the city. and we were looking for a space, and everybody's like, oh, we got to find a space. And I said, well, let me ask the guy from the convention center. And they was like, oh, he probably won't do it. As soon as they asked him, he jumped in. Jump in and help us when you could help us. And if you don't want to help us, don't try to hurt us. You know, and when you talk about what those students could do, what you can do is you could deliver a positive message about change. Like, I talked to them before this started, and they're getting ready to go back to regular school. You could be the messenger and model positive behavior. And here's what I want you to think about. When kids get ready to come out of the game, they could get killed. Like, I'm from Victory Park, so I went to Victory Park to see a kid, and he said, you know, I'm going to get out of the game. I'm having a baby. You know, I'm done. I said, don't tell anybody. He made an announcement, and I flew to California. As soon as I landed, his mom called. They went to his house and shot him 9 times. And so you got to think about when you get ready to get out of this, you could lose your life getting out of this. And you know what I'll tell you about us up here, we're not bulletproof. You know, I think everybody up here's life has been threatened at some point in time, mine even recently, of what it looks like when you're doing this work and you're trying to help. Some people don't want the city to change. They want it to stay exactly like it is so they can remain relevant. You know, so if you think about helping us, think about what it looks like if you volunteer. I'm not saying go to the West End and get a kid and take him to your house in the Polo Fields. I'm saying meet him somewhere for lunch. That's what I tell those prosecutors when they say, oh, should we take him to our house? Not yet. Let's make sure what he's going to do before you take him to your house. Meet him and have lunch with him, because I never want to say mentor a kid and then you take him to your house, then his friends come back and rob your house. So meet him somewhere neutral, but jump in and help us in this cause, because if you don't help us now, you'll pay later. And I said that 10 years ago, and here we are. 10 years ago at the Fisher administration, we said, we have a gang problem. It's going to saturate the city and blood's going to be in the street. Here we are. 10 years later, we have a gang problem and blood is in the streets because they didn't listen.
And for the young people from the school, the way that you all can help, to me, the cycle starts with you, with your age group. And your proximity to it is what makes you the most effective in trying to facilitate change. We, with our Pivot to Peace program, we need credible messengers to be able to go into the neighborhoods and talk to the people and to let them know that gun violence is not the only way to resolve conflict. Mm-hmm. Being able to promote nonviolence as a way of conflict resolution is a good first step. And if you're able to take that same mindset back to the school, back to your peers, mm-hmm. and they see that you accept it and that you're willing to resolve things without a gun being involved, then hopefully that perpetuates and keeps going. And the same with, I echo Kim's sentiment for you all. It's gonna affect it's already affecting our city as a whole. Mm-hmm. If you pay attention to even the statistics, it's spreading out already. A few years ago, it was mostly in our west and south end. It was rare to see any type of gun violence incidents in St. Matthews or Linden or Fern Creek, but today that's not the case. And it's only going to continue to spread if we don't show people that there are alternatives to what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to get information. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to pay attention to those things that are not normally publicized in terms of who people are. So that means volunteering in some of the places that mm-hmm. you probably wouldn't normally volunteer in. And I'm not going to tell you to be trying to be volunteering at 10 o'clock at night. Don't do that. You know, but I mean, that's real. And, you know, let's just keep it where it's at. And I think what we found in our group, in our projects with other organizations, is that some of what happens with positive young people tends to rub off on some of the ones that are not quite as positive. When they see you making the choice to do something constructive, to be a contributor, and how good that makes you feel and how good that makes you look, they a lot of times move in that direction. We've had a lot of folks who, perfect example, and I got a ton of examples, I'm sorry, y'all. But a young lady who was living in the projects and 11 years old, she was babysitting for the drug dealers in her house. So consequently, she got involved with our group sessions. At the time, she was 11 or 12 years old. We stayed with her. She became a student at Central High School, became one of the best basketball players in the state. I thought she was the best, but they said she was second best. She ended up getting a scholarship to Nebraska. She's now the head coach at Jackson State University. So it's all about how much time you put in, number one, but a person's got to be willing to make the hard choice to do the right thing. You make that choice, and I guarantee you it'll pay for you. It'll pay off for you every time. When I was 13 years old, my daddy said, "You're in charge." He wasn't coming back. So I'm like, I never paid a bill or nothing like that. How am I gonna be in charge? So when I went to my mom, who I always went to my mom to fix this for me, make it right in my head. So how you gonna raise me with Dad not being here? She said, "I'm not trying to raise you to be a man. I'm trying to raise good people. I got 4 kids to worry about. You're gonna have to do your part. You're gonna have to, everybody's gotta play their position." I knew how to do all the wrong stuff. I come from bootleggers. My family was those people out in the woods and all that. So you learn how to do what you learn how to do. But one of the things I learned about being on a farm, and this is the reason why I'm still doing this work at 200 years old. A farmer farms until they can't farm no more.
That's right.
So that's kind of where I am, you know. So I would say, you know, everybody needs to kind of tune into what they can do, how they can meet folks, how they can listen, and don't be judgmental.
That's right.
You know, don't let Spooky Electric, that's what I call TV. Don't let Spooky Electric tell you who the enemy is.
That's right.
Who the culprit is. Find out from just the information flows and be willing to talk about it in your circles. Right. You know, a lot of times in our round, we trying to talk about what we know about. Every once in a while, introduce a subject to make everybody look at you like you're crazy.
And you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. Are you willing to have the uncomfortable conversation that can move the city to the next level? Everybody wants to be comfortable. There is no comfort in pain of other people. Just food for thought.
And I think that beautifully sums up exactly what the forum is about, and having those conversations in the civil discourse to bring attention to those issues impacting Louisville. We are out of time for questions, but I just wanted to say thank you to our panelists for not only being here, but for all the work that you all are doing. And we'll be announcing our program for next month shortly, so be on the lookout for that notification. But thank you all for joining us today.